Hey everyone, Devin from Arcane Hound here. First and foremost, want to give a huge thank you to everyone that supported us and backed us on Kickstarter. It really means a lot. So from the bottom of our hearts, thank you so much. Want to give a behind the scenes look on how we design our miniatures and our terrain, and more specifically, what we're thinking about when we're designing them, especially when it comes to 3D printing involved, whether it be models that are support free or models that are pre-supported, or what I like to say limited supports. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. So here's two examples of two of our miniatures, one being support free and one being pre-supported. On the left you have King Olap, who is fully support free, and then on the right you have Shalhira, our sand tag, who is pre-supported, or I like to say limited supports. So when I first go around designing a miniature for 3D printing, I think about first and foremost the character itself. I'm not actually thinking about, oh, how am I going to make this pre-supported, or how am I going to, it's like, how am I limiting the supports that's needed? I'm always thinking about the character, and I'm always thinking about the design of the character. As far as like its personality, what traits he has. For King Olap, for example, he's a leader. He's a brute. I wanted him to be very like Conan the Barbarian, sitting at his throne, type of feeling. With Shalhira, she's definitely has this really darkness to her. She's a very evil creature. And she kind of comes up from the sand and can devolves into it, and she comes up from the sand and this claws at you, right? So I wanted to really highlight that in her. And so that's the first thing I think about when designing these miniatures. And then from there, I go on, okay, I think about the poses I want him in. Like, again, with Olap, I wanted him kind of sitting at a throne. So I'm like, okay, sitting at a throne, how am I going to make that support free at this point? So I try to go support free as much as possible, but then sometimes it just doesn't work out support free as the way I want it to, or to have an interesting pose or a more dynamic pose in certain cases. But Shalhira here is a really good example of that. So Olap is 100% support free. Seeing from its weapon dug into the ground that's supporting his arm. On the other side, it's from his body. It's all about these V shapes. So it's coming in line, so it's coming up and then up, right? So it's able to print support free. Everything from the bottom up is being supported from the cloth going upward. He's sitting on a stump, his legs, his hand resting on his thigh here going upward. Everything is kind of moving up. All the detail on his head here, it's moving up with his little cheeky grin and his one little tooth. Even on the side here in his little gullet, it's kind of coming up at an angle, at least at about a 45-degree angle. So with Shalhira, you'll notice if you look at her at first, you're like, wait, she looks support free for the most part, which in fact she actually is, except for just a few places. And I want to kind of talk about that. And I do this a lot with a lot of my miniatures and models. We'll go ahead and solo her real quick. So you'll notice she starts coming from the ground here. Her hands coming up. These are coming up at like a nice little 45-ish degree angle. So those are going to be supporting themselves for the most part. Same here. This angle coming upward. It's going to be supporting itself for the most part. You might need one support here, but wherever I think there might need a support, I kind of put some nice detail there. And so if a support does, especially on FDMs, you can break on support, it leaves that little kind of leftover stuff. You can actually hide it really well inside of the detail, especially on the back here. But the only parts that's not support free from her, you'll see, are her ears and her nose. Her chin is mostly support free. This can actually print support free, depending on your settings. But you might need one little support on the edge of the chin here. Excuse me. So why didn't I make her support free? Why didn't I change her nose design or this and that? Well, I didn't want to. This is her design, right? This is the character that was in our heads, that we wanted. And for her to be support free in this kind of design, she'd have to basically be looking straight up, right? Which wouldn't look very good in a design of a miniature. Especially when you have all your characters looking up with these monstrous noses, right? And you'll see that a lot with like a lot of chins. They'll be just like tucked into their chest or what have you. So for the most part, I try to keep it as limited supports as possible if needed, especially when we're pre-supporting them. So with her, when we pre-support her for FDM, the only supports you need are one little on the nose, maybe one here just in case, and then just a few along the ears here. Nice little small ones on the ears, and that's basically it. Everything else is, for the most part, support free. Even this, you have like little overhangs here, but this is actually nice and supported through itself with this nice little angle. So you get a little overhang, but not very much. It's enough to be support free, which is nice. Even underneath here, her legs are kind of scissored in a way. So this one's coming out, this one's coming this way, or this one's basically more forward motion, this one's a backward motion, and it's going into the sand. As we get a nice view of her demon cake. But it's all about those V shapes, right? So it's this nice V shape here, or U shape, which allows you to kind of move up and then to move out, essentially, to help get more support free. But everything should be moving upwards in a nice angle. It should be supporting itself and connecting. And so we do a lot of testing. Every time I have a pose, I'll start. This is kind of what it looks like when I'm kind of sculpting. I keep everything kind of separate. So it's very easy for me to pose the miniatures around in certain ways. And so before I even start detailing, I'll start just posing them in interesting ways to see if I can get it support free and see how it's going to print, and then we'll print them and test them out. Which also leads me into the next thing I want to talk about is the overall style of the miniatures. I've gotten a lot of comments about how people like the style. It's like it's kind of almost cartoony in a way, but a little stylized, and that's definitely on purpose. And that's for more of the miniature painters out there. If you guys are painting the miniatures, I wanted to keep nice, kind of bigger, bolder shapes, because when you're painting a little miniature, the little guys, right? You have little miniature here. They're pretty small, and we all know it can be hard to get in some of those smaller areas or get that fine detail. So I try to get a lot of the overall shapes nice and big, and then going in and adding in some really crazy detail, especially here just on the nose and her face, little wrinkles in her eyes and this and that you can pick up pretty nicely with some nice washes as well. But for some of this stuff, especially on FDM, it's going to be harder to paint some of these, or even see some of these details. But on a resin, they're going to come across really, really nice. But again, try to keep it nice, big, bolder shapes around the models, and so which makes it a little more stylized in a way, which is I like that kind of stylized realism. That's kind of my thing. So let's talk about some of our bigger miniatures, like our sandworm here. So for some of our bigger stuff, like obviously this one here, it's not support free, right? There's clearly a lot of stuff going on here, especially in the mouth. But what we do with ones like this is we kind of cut them in half. For example, I've got it right here. So this is the bottom half here, and it's got a little key inside. This was printed on FDM here and is glued kind of the key inside. And then you have the head, which prints flat on the build plate like this, and then you can just combine them together essentially. Now, obviously, the problem with that is you have that nice layer line there that you can see in between, but those are easily fixed. For example, this one here, this one is one of those that was printed in two pieces, and if I can get a closer look for you guys, here, so you can kind of see the layer line there, and on this side, it's pretty well hidden. You can kind of see it on the top here. And so you can get away with stuff like this using stuff like filler putty or green stuff or other kind of materials like that as well. And so for our bigger stuff, we like to cut them in half and key them. With the smaller stuff, it's a lot harder to do that, especially for 3D printing, because 3D printing, it's not like a model you're getting from like Warhammer or where it's like sprues and it's nice and connected in. These aren't manufactured. These are printed, and you're going to be printing them at home. So to do that, especially with resin, when it prints, it can expand or contract. Usually it expands, and so it won't get very precise in those when you're connecting those. FDM is usually pretty precise, but even then, you can have some issues here, right, as well. So we try to get as best as possible for these big ones, and it's much easier to clean up on these big ones. It's much easier to connect bigger models than it is really small models. For our terrain, all of our terrain is actually fully support free. So you have like big chunking guys like this right here. You have some smaller pieces. Well, this is actually still pretty big, but this is a tornado. We'll get back to this one. And then you have like other rock formations like so. And a lot of these rock formations here, this one as well, clearly they're printed flat here, so print support free. But if you notice, I have left the top flat as well, so you can not print it upside down, but you can print two, and then on the table you can connect it. So you basically have two styles in one. So if this one prints like this, support free, you can print another one, and now it's like this as well. So it's almost like a 2-in-1 kind of terrain, which is really, really cool. Some of them are not 2-in-1 terrain. Some of them are just your standard kind of terrain that can, like, you know, nice flat areas where you can fit your minis in on. So that's what we do with a lot of these. Some are really, really big, like this one right here. This is only 2 pieces of one big one that's coming together, and so they're kind of flat and coming together like so. And then you can hide those layer lines with, like, again, a little green stuff, little putty, or whatever have you. For our tornado's kind of a crazy one. This one actually is fully support free with the design, and like I was saying before, with the smaller miniatures, everything is kind of going upward and spiraling upward, right, at this nice angle. So you always have these nice kind of 45-degree angles going upward, so the model just prints and supports itself. This one was actually printed via resin, printed support free. I usually don't like to print resin flat on the build plate, because they stick really bad, and with supports for resin, they're really easy to take off. You just have the model, you dip in warm water, just hot water, and they just peel off like butter. So when I personally print resin, I usually always do supports, especially with characters, especially with faces as well, because I like to tilt the face back, or the model back up, and so you have that nice detail in the face still. Otherwise, if it stands straight, it goes forward, you get all that resin in there, and it can just kind of mess up the detail a bit. So I like kind of printing them at 45-degree angles. But we do provide all of our models, like for Odie, for example, we'll provide them support free and pre-supported as well for resin printing if you want to do that angled printing as well. So one last thing I wanted to kind of talk about was some of our miniatures, some of our characters and creatures, they require a certain level of detail after the fact, after they're printed. What I really mean by that is our gelatinous cube here. He's one of them. He is a gelatinous creature. He's kind of see-through away. And so if you print him with non-see-through, he'll look something like this, right? If you're not using like a see-through resin, or even like a clear FDM filament. So it comes out something like this. But I wanted to kind of be more true to the character when I made this one. So I put it in this one was the Anycubic green. It's that standard Anycubic green I think that comes with most of the printers. And then you make them hollow. So by using just hollowing them out in any whatever software you're using to slice these. And we'll even include a lot of our resin ones. We'll include them hollowed out as well for you. But with stuff like this, you get kind of a really cool subsurface scattering effect. And I'll actually bring it close here to the camera, and I'll shine a nice little flashlight. And I've actually put a hole underneath here so you guys can see this kind of really cool effect as it's hollow inside, and it's got that subsurface scattering effect going on. So it's really, really interesting little technique, which is nice. Super simple, super easy, and then you just kind of paint on top, and then do like a gloss clear varnish on top, so it gets that kind of slimy look, and it comes out really well. So in some of our miniatures, we do think about the process of afterwards of how might people want to print these in a certain way to be a little more true to the character. So the gelatinous cube is a great example of that. So again, we include a lot of our big miniatures, especially like our ones like our sandworm, or ones like the tornado here that you can print on the resin. We will include them hollowed out, and they'll basically just have little holes that, again, you can fill with like little putty, and just kind of sand over the top and then prime it, and then you can't even see the holes there anymore. So a big thank you again for everyone who's checking out our Kickstarter, the Elwood Chronicles of Menagerie, for everyone who's backed us. Again, we really, really appreciate it. It's a lifelong dream of ours to kind of bring our world to life, so it's really awesome to see all the support. If you want to see kind of more behind the scenes videos like this, please hit us up. Let us know what you guys want to see. If you want to go more in depth about painting, different techniques, techniques about how to sculpt, how to get into sculpting, how to work a 3D printer. If you guys don't, some of you don't have 3D printers yet, we'd be more than happy to teach you guys and give you all the info that we can share. So again, thank you so much for supporting us, and if you want to learn more, please feel free to hit us up. Thanks for going on this amazing journey with us. Thank you.